It is a dark and stormy October day, and I need to make a chemical. So I've got an idea for a project for a Halloween sort of decoration, but Halloween's in a couple of days, so I gotta get cracking. The actual thing only needs 2 ingredients, just alcohol and copper chloride, but I don't have any copper chloride, so I'm gonna make it real quick. It's a simple reaction. It's just a combination of this beautiful blue crystal, copper sulfate, otherwise known as bluestone, and calcium chloride, which is just a chloride salt. It's somewhat acidic, and hopefully these two will react pretty easily with each other in a double displacement reaction to create copper chloride and calcium sulfate, which I'll be able to filter off because calcium sulfate is very much insoluble. So I'm gonna get cracking. First things first, I'm gonna dissolve the copper chloride. I think I'm gonna do this a little bit at a time because it's sort of hard to dissolve and requires strong stirring, as you can see. Hopefully as this stuff dissolves, it will make a nice blue solution. You can already see it starting to turn blue. So I've added in the copper sulfate, and I'm waiting for that to dissolve. It should dissolve in this much water, but it's always sort of slow to dissolve copper sulfate. So this will take a while, but in the meantime, I'll dissolve my calcium chloride so that I can add it to this as a solution. Calcium chloride is much easier to dissolve, so hopefully just a little bit of water and I'll be able to dissolve this just by stirring it by hand. Now the thing is that this does produce a lot of heat when it's dissolving, so you gotta be careful of that, and it is acidic. This isn't like sodium chloride where it's a neutral salt. This is an acidic salt, so you have to be careful with this stuff. Alright, so my copper sulfate is totally dissolved, so I'm gonna add my solution of calcium chloride. Let's see what happens. I've never done this reaction before. It's getting cloudy. That's a good sign. Look at that, it's turning much brighter blue. That's the calcium sulfate is white compared to the copper chloride blue. So the mix is making a much lighter color. That's really pretty. I like this reaction a lot. You can see there's still a couple crystals of copper sulfate in there that haven't dissolved. It's probably getting thick too. That looks like a thick, milky solution. I think that will filter pretty well. So my plan is to let this settle. I'm hoping all the calcium sulfate will settle to the bottom, and then I'll just be able to pour off the copper chloride and filter out anything that comes through. So hopefully that'll be good. It was a quick reaction, but like, I always love double displacement reactions. They're almost always my favorite because of just such obvious changes that happen to the chemicals. It's been sitting for a couple minutes and you can see it's already starting to settle. So I'm gonna leave it for probably like, I don't know, 15 minutes, something like that should probably be enough to get it all to settle. There's still quite a bit left in here. I'm gonna have to do some sort of vacuum filtration to get it, but this stuff is pretty good. So I said some kind of vacuum filtration because I don't have a vacuum filter, so I'm using just a regular paper filter that I'm going to assist with this comically oversized syringe. So I'm gonna try and pull through a little bit at a time. And hopefully we'll get some nice chloride. So I've got my filtered stuff. It's not, I could run it through again, probably be a good idea, but honestly I think it's fine because this project is really crude and quick, so I don't really care if there's a little bit of contaminant. It honestly won't matter at all. I'm going to boil this down to a salt in a glass beaker inside of a steel pot with some water in it on top of this induction hot plate. I don't want to put this directly into the metal pot because it's made out of steel and copper salts can react with iron in a single replacement reaction. So I don't want them to touch. I just want to boil this inside of it because the induction hot plate needs metal to heat. Also, this thing, I mean, this is borosilicate glass, so it shouldn't be a problem. But this thing can get kind of hot, so I put water in the metal pot to distribute heat around the beaker to keep it from heating too quickly. Alternatively, you could probably use something like sand, but water should be fine. Hopefully, this will go good. I should quickly mention that I threw a few pieces of broken glass into the beaker to act as boiling chips because this hot plate does not stir. So it's a good idea to keep something in there to keep it from flash boiling. So yes, I put in some broken glass, which should do the trick. I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's turned like much more green as it's been boiling. I've boiled it down to about 25 or so milliliters. Not very much left. I'm not gonna dry it all the way out. I'm just gonna dump this into some alcohol and then I'm gonna desiccate the water out with Epsom salt. So, I've got here about 100 milliliters, a little bit less, of 80%, I think, something like that, alcohol. So I'll add this in, and this is isopropyl, which is not the most, it's not the best alcohol for this. It would be much better to use ethyl alcohol, but, or ethanol. But this is what I have, so it's what I'll use. So that was really interesting, and I've learned a few things. One is that I did not get nearly enough water out of the alcohol. As it burned, the water stayed behind and soaked to the wick, and now it's just a damp wick that I cannot light. I think what happened was I tried to desiccate it with Epsom salt. Sort of, you know, I'm running low on time here, so I was sort of flustered. And it didn't really occur to me that by desiccating it, while the copper chloride was in solution, the water that the Epsom salt would absorb would drop the copper chloride directly out. And I think it sort of coated the Epsom salt, and it created this concrete sort of crystal like solid in the bottom that I believe kept the Epsom salt from further desiccating. So I think it's like probably 70% alcohol and 30% water, and that water just prevents the wick from working. You know, you could see it worked then, but the longer it burned, the weaker it was, until finally this damp wick just does not burn at all. And if it's damp and doesn't burn, then pretty much the only thing that can mean is that that wick is soaked. So the other thing was the effect, I believe, was a lot weaker than it possibly could be, because I'm using isopropyl alcohol, and I'm using twice as much as I meant to for this quantity of copper chloride. That means it's dilute, and isopropyl isn't the best for this. Ethyl alcohol is far better, in fact can dissolve twice as much copper chloride per milliliter. So I want to use ethyl alcohol. Normally I would make ethyl alcohol, it's pretty simple to make, but Halloween is tomorrow, so I've really got to get going on this. I have a little bit of store-bought ethyl alcohol, 95% denatured lab-grade alcohol. Only a little bit left, but I've been saving it for a special occasion, and I think this is that occasion. So I'm going to get cracking and make another batch of copper chloride as quick as I can. Alright, time for same reaction again. Let's see how it goes the second time. Much faster that time, look at that. Thought that would happen. Slowing down the stir bar, it's so thick. Look at that, it's turned completely solid. I'm gonna have to add a lot more water to keep to this to make it make it possible to separate, basically. Wow, completely solid. I suppose I could just vacuum filter this. There we go, all filtered. Time to boil this down. It's late the night before Halloween, and I have finally finished crystallizing copper chloride by boiling it down. It looks crazy. I've never seen something crystallized like this. It's all, there's green, there's brownish red, there's blue. It's really pretty. It's kind of surprisingly pretty. I know it has different hydrate forms. I believe the blue is the dihydrate and the red is anhydrous. I don't know what green is. I wonder if it's some mix of the two, or perhaps it's the blue mixed with calcium sulfate. I'm really not certain, but it's very pretty. And I'm going to mix it with my ethyl alcohol and try and make a very eerie jack-o'-lantern. So last night, it was all different colors, but this morning, it's all pretty much the same. There's a few different hues of greens and blues, but it's all pretty much the same. I believe what happened is it desiccated water out of the air and hydrated itself. It's really interesting. I'm still not certain why some is blue and some is green. It's probably just a mix of hydrates or impurity. It's possible some of the copper, either copper sulfate or copper chloride, was reduced somehow. I know copper 1 is green. Typically, there's a lot of green copper 1 salts. But it's hard to tell. Anyways, it looks really pretty, and I think I've got enough to make it work. So I've got about 9 grams, 8.85 grams of product here. It's a mix. You can see there's still some of those red anhydrous ones, which is good, but most of it seems to be in the dihydrate form. So this is a little bit, well, a good amount less than I would hope for, because a lot of this weight is still water because of the dihydrate. But this isn't bad. This is pretty good, especially with how crude a lot of my methods were for this. This is pretty much what I could hope for. So I'm not upset. I'm gonna measure out about as much. I believe it's for ethyl alcohol, it's like I guess it's 50 grams per 100 milliliters of ethyl alcohol, I believe is what it is. So I'll basically measure out enough for, you know, to be fairly concentrated, and I'll see what it does. Here's about 20 milliliters of ethyl alcohol. Gonna add in a little bit more than I meant to add all at once, but we'll see what that does. So this is what my first attempt at the fuel looked like, and this is what the current one looks like. So as you can see, there's a massive difference. Look how deep green that is. I cannot imagine this will do anything but burn deep green. Here it is. The copper chloride spirit lamp. Look at that. Beautiful.